So let's answer some questions from fans. I think we've touched on this before, but another follower said, I didn't think the umpire was being fair to Ohtani in Monday's game when he hit his 42nd homer, I guess one of his at-bats against Corey Kluber. Do you think Ohtani's being treated unfairly or being singled out?
No, I don't think so. I don't think the umpires care who the hitter is. I think they're just looking at the ball and whether it's a ball or strike. I don't think that they have any vendetta against Ohtani or treating him any differently than anybody else.
So you kind of answered the next questions by this follower, but is it true that umpires tend to make tough calls against young players who are on the rise? Are they making tough calls against Ohtani because he's showing an unsatisfied expression or attitude toward the umpires in past games? Any of them true?
I think that people believe that, 20, 30 years ago that, a rookie would not get the benefit of the doubt of a call. I'm not sure that's true anymore. I just think the umpires have a hard enough job just deciding if the pitch is a ball or a strike without considering who the hitter is and who the pitcher is. So I really don't think that they are taking that into consideration. And also nowadays there's, with the pitch tracking and the replays and everything like that, the umpires, it would be very obvious if they were making, when they make bad calls. So they want to do everything they can to make their calls as accurately as possible, regardless of who's up.
Some people say the Angels aren't able to acquire any ace level pitchers because of the team's 6-man rotation. Is that true?
No, I don't think so. I think if they got an ace pitcher, he would not pitch in a 6-man rotation. He would just pitch every fourth day and everybody else would work around him. So I don't think they would do that. I think the reason they did that is because they did not have an ace level pitcher, and also because they were coming off a shortened season and they wanted to limit everybody's innings. There's not really ace level pitchers for them to acquire for next year, but if they do happen to get somebody like that and that guy wants to pitch every fifth day, I'm sure the Angels would be happy to accommodate and they would just shuffle the other guys around. It's really not super complicated.
What are your thoughts on how well Justin Upton's doing? Has he played up to his expectations?
He's had a very interesting year. He started out really bad, and then he was really good, and then he was hurt, and then he came back and he was pretty bad again. That's kind of the story of his career with the Angels, has been really up and down. I think he's still got a pretty solid baseline, like a base level skill that you can put him out there and you'll get a certain quality of play. With Joe Adell and Brandon Marsh, those are the young guys that are sort of the alternatives. They're still so young, and we saw Joe Adell last year. He was really struggled a lot and did not even play up to the level of bad Justin Upton. So you still don't know what those guys are going to do. Those guys obviously have the potential to be better than him. They also have the potential to be worse than him. And whereas Upton is a little more of a smaller range of things, that his bad is probably going to be better than the bad of those other guys. And he still has a chance to be pretty good, for stretches like he was, for part of this year.
Follower asked, it seems like injuries are a huge factor in determining the team's overall performance this season. What are your thoughts on injuries determining the outcome?
Yeah, obviously, if your best players are not on the field, your team is not going to be as good. There's no question about that. Injuries have hurt the Angels a lot this year. Actually, considering the injuries they've had, they've probably played a little better than they should have, because they've lost their two of their three best offensive players really for most of the year, Mike Trout and Anthony Rendon, and a lot of their pitchers either didn't perform very well and then ended up getting hurt later. So they should be a lot worse than they are, really, when you look at that. But definitely it's been a problem for them.
Do you think players are getting hurt more often compared to the past?
That's a tough question to ask. I think everybody thinks that always. Everybody always thinks players get hurt too much. I think they feel like the players on their team get hurt too much, and they don't really look at the fact that the players on other teams also get hurt a lot. It's tough to play if you're a little less than 100% too, and so teams are not as willing to just let a guy go out there and play if he's got something wrong with him, because it's not so much that the guy is like a soft player, can't handle the pain, but it's just they really want to get the optimal performance, and they feel like if a guy is only at 80% of his capability because he's playing with some injury, that some other guy who maybe is not as good a player, but he can outperform that guy at 80%. So they just will put the guy on the injured list and let somebody else play. It's just the way the game is nowadays.
So are you saying that teams in the past let players who are kind of injured keep on playing, but now teams are being more careful?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that there's much more financial investment now in players than 30 years ago. So you don't want a guy going out there with a little injury that could lead to a bigger injury, and then you've really hurt your investment. I think the second reason is just as you go through history, the talent pool of baseball gets deeper and deeper, and their replacement players are better. So whereas 30 years ago, if your star player was playing at 80% capability, maybe that was still better than the guy you would bring off the bench. Now, if your star player is at 80% capability, you probably have a guy on the bench who can do better than that. So the player is just gonna go on the injured list, and the other player is gonna take his place.
I guess players were still getting injured back then.
Oh yeah, and they're probably getting injured more back then because the medicine wasn't as good and the training methods weren't as good. But I think that the teams just like let them play injured more often and than they do now.
What are the teams doing to prevent and predict injuries? I heard that's actually becoming kind of big in sports now.
Yeah, that's definitely been something for a long time that teams have been trying to do. It's really hard to do because there's just some things you can't avoid. I think you hear a lot of people blaming the trainers, when a guy has an injury, a hamstring injury or something like that. And these guys are doing like everything they could do. And the Angels have also just recently kind of redid their whole medical staff probably 5 years ago, and hasn't really made a difference. So I think ultimately players are going to get hurt, and it doesn't really matter who the trainer is. And I think it's more about the players themselves than the trainers or doctors or anything like that.
The Dodgers and Angels are both located in the same geographical area in Southern California. Why are there differences in the atmosphere in the stadium and fans' enthusiasm?
Well, the Dodgers, first of all, have a little more of a traditional following. They have more of a nationwide following. I mean, there's Dodger fans all over the country just because they're kind of one of the iconic franchises, in the sport. And they've also had a lot more success than the Angels. Although they went a long time without winning the World Series until 2020, they're perennial, playoff team very often, and the Angels really have not been. So I think that's why the Dodgers just have kind of a bigger following, and I think that they do better attendance wise. They have more fans go to their games just in Southern California, so that creates kind of a different atmosphere too.
What allowed Dodgers to become kind of the national franchise?
Well, I mean, they've been around for since 1900 or something. The Angels have only been around since 1961. So that's kind of, you have generations and generations of Dodger fans, from back when they were in Brooklyn. And that's sort of how you get like a fan base that transcends just, the geographic area. You've got people that were Brooklyn Dodger fans in the 30s, and then they passed it to their sons, and then all those people moved all over the country. And now you have all these Dodger fans all over the country. Whereas that's a 60-year head start on the Angels. And the Angels also were pretty bad for the first 20 years of their existence too. Plus the Dodgers were here first. So all the people that grew up in Southern California became Dodger fans before, the Angels existed. It was only like 4 years later that the Angels showed up. But still it's a head start for the Dodgers.
It's a kind of a silly question, but my favorite movie is Angels in the Outfield, one of my favorite baseball movies. Do you think that had any impact on Angels' popularity?
I don't think so.
Oh.
I doubt it.
What are your favorite ballparks to visit?
This is a question somebody just asked me, so I have a pretty good list. San Francisco is number one as my favorite ballpark in the major leagues. It's really nice. It's new, relatively new. It opened in 2000, and the setting is beautiful. It's right off on San Francisco Bay. If you go up to the upper deck, you can see, ships going by, and it's really nice. And then the next, I have kind of a group of four that are 2 through 5, sort of in varying order. And they are San Diego, Seattle, Minnesota, and Pittsburgh. And probably San Diego I would put sort of at the top of that list. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and it's just a beautiful ballpark in a beautiful area. It's really great views and lots of good food too, and it's just a really good atmosphere. A lot of the stadiums that even are not in that list are pretty nice, so it's not that easy to differentiate between the really good ones and the pretty good ones and the sort of good ones. Most of them are nice.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future videos. You can also watch our past videos from the description below. Hope to see you again next time.